Okay, let's talk for a minute about WWE's use, or wrestling's use, of controversial figures when it comes to boosting business and generating interest and all of these things. Recently in WWE we saw the return of Brock Lesnar, which caused an awful lot of conversation given that Brock is cited, his name is cited 44 times in Janelle Grant's lawsuit against Vince McMahon and WWE. In the past, we've seen countless other people who have either said horrible things or done horrible things or been accused of horrible things come back through the doors of major wrestling promotions. AEW used Ric Flair quite heavily, promoting his energy drink and during Sting's retirement tour, all of that stuff. Hulk Hogan came back into the WWE fold about 5 or 6 years after his racism scandal. People like the Ultimate Warrior came back into WWE after seemingly burning every bridge imaginable. So wrestling companies using names like this is nothing new, and it won't change anytime soon, I don't think. A big name on a lot of people's lips today specifically is Vince McMahon. And currently there's no bigger controversial name left for WWE to bring back. I mean, he's the biggest name they could bring back in terms of name value as well, but obviously he's been accused of some pretty monstrous things in Janelle Grant's lawsuit, which is still in the courts and still being litigated. The reason for many people that a lot of conversation has come up regarding his name is some stuff that Bully Ray actually said on Busted Open After Dark. And I actually think quite a lot of this is on the money here. So let's talk about it. Bully was talking about the recent Hulk Hogan documentary on TMZ, which featured Vince. It was Vince's first public appearance in ages. He didn't look great physically and stuff like that, but we're not here to comment on that kind of stuff. He was talking about Hulk Hogan, and he was standing up for Hogan in various ways that we covered on the news earlier this week. Bully said the following. He was wondering if Vince's appearance on here might be some kind of opening of the door for him showing up on WWE programming again. Here's a big quote. In the video package that the WWE put together honoring Hulk Hogan, they did show an image of Vince McMahon raising Hulk Hogan's hand. Now, some of you might be saying, well, that's just one image in a montage of hundreds of images, but it all starts somewhere, and we saw a lot of Vince tonight, and it got me thinking, have we seen the last of Vince McMahon in WWE? Do you think putting Vince out there tonight opens the door just a little bit? There was then a caller on the Busted Open show that pitched the idea of Vince getting involved somehow in John Cena's retirement tour, specifically coming out after what will be Cena's final match in December and congratulating him and raising his hand, to which Bully said, now this is a bit more disagreeable. I think it's a really good idea. It's going to be a very emotional night, and Vince is the guy that gave John his opportunity. If Vince were to come out and in that moment give John his final farewell, I think that people would like to see that or would embrace it, and maybe for that moment in time, forget about all of the things that are going on in quote unquote real life with Vince. I think they could ride that wave of positivity. So I don't think that would be as well received as Bully thinks. I think that the Vince issue, not the Vish issue, divides a lot of people in WWE's fan base for sure. A lot of it is probably crowd dependent as well. This is going to be in Boston, presumably, Cena's final match. We've seen in other big cities, the crowd reactions can be a little off the usual. Some of them more negative, some of them more positive. You don't know, it's very difficult to predict. That being said, when Vince came on WWE television, pretty much as soon as the accusations started dropping, he was welcomed like some kind of returning hero. So, hey, maybe people would just lap it up in the moment. And with regards to Cena, is an interesting case as well, because he's not been shy of speaking positively of Vince in public. They're very close friends. John Cena recently said of working with Brock Lesnar, of course, they deal him, I play him, or something along those lines, after Triple H had insinuated that John had requested to work with Brock in his farewell tour. We don't know how much of that is he said, she said, right? We don't know what component of that is fully true or whatever. It's probably a little bit from column A and a little bit from column B. But the point is that if this idea was pitched of Vince coming out, unless John Cena's agents and John himself think that this would be damaging to his brand, which it would be, Vince has been accused of some terrible stuff. He might go with it. But there's a little bit more here. and Bully put out there the idea that WWE and TKO are going to be monitoring the situation. They're going to be monitoring the reaction to see how a Vince appearance might go down, gauge the viability of it, if you will. The wrestling business is very calculated. I definitely think that WWE and TKO will sit back and monitor social media tonight and tomorrow to see just what kind of response Vince McMahon got for being on this documentary. So, yeah, you've probably all seen the clips from the doc by now. They get aggregated everywhere. You know, anytime something wrestling and big happens, it's all over the internet within minutes, so you've probably seen the stuff. But if you didn't see it, just in case, he said a bunch of different things, including Hulk Hogan said some racist things, but he was not a racist man. He said that a couple of times. These are his beliefs, obviously. And I think like the part of this where Bully is correct is the idea that TKO and WWE will be monitoring it. They will look at this situation as they did with Brock and go, okay, how much backlash are we going to receive now? Too much? Let's wait a couple of months. How about now? Okay, it's still a little bit too high, but now, at SummerSlam 2025, let's do it. And of course, they did receive, you know, some backlash and some online conversation, understandably so, for booking Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam. But in the reaction, it was an overwhelmingly positive noise. And admittedly, part of that is a surprise and all of this stuff, but there's also a bunch of evidence there, I think, to suggest that in the arena, unless it's Hulk Hogan on the 6th of January in Los Angeles, but in the arena, for the most part, I don't think a lot of people care about the controversies. Which is sad because if you've gone through and read this lawsuit, Brock is not a defendant in the lawsuit, but his name is mentioned as a participant in the trafficking. Yeah, it's absolutely miserable stuff. And again, this is a lawsuit that is still ongoing. Nobody's been cleared. It is still going through the courts and a resolution has not yet been reached. So when TKO are sitting there, I think they're going to apply an exact same approach to what they did with Brock with Vince. I think that they are going to wait until they think they can kind of get away with it, I guess, and then do it. I think it's only a matter of time before you see Vince McMahon on television again in WWE. Now, I don't think it'll happen while the lawsuit is still open. I think that the legal team in WWE, TKO, wherever, will probably be like, no, this subject of open litigation, we can't put him on our television screen. I think they'll either wait until it's been resolved in the courts or a settlement has been reached or whatever. There was that line in the Wrestling Observer newsletter last week where Nick Khan, who's the president of WWE, said something or believes that unless there's a criminal conviction, people are free to use. And that adds up with what we know about WWE history. Also, TKO, right? The UFC's under that umbrella. Dana White slapped his wife in public a couple of years ago and there was nothing there. No kind of recourse for that whatsoever. So in terms of scruples over using certain names, I don't think they have them. And I think it will be I think it's a question of when, not if, you will see Vince on TV again. Now, I don't think they will ever put him in creative control ever again. They would be insane to do that. His last X amount of years, you can decide the cutoff point yourselves, because your mileage may vary. His last years were terrible creatively. Like, some of the worst, most soul-destroying wrestling TV I've ever had to sit through and cover every week. Triple H has brought a marked improvement in terms of fan satisfaction and the perception of WWE stories and the way they're spoken online. So I don't think they'll ever put him in any kind of position of power ever again. But will they use them on TV if they think they can get a pop, if they think they can draw ratings, sell a few tickets, sell a few t-shirts, get an appearance with Cena or whoever? Yeah, absolutely, they will. Everything about the company's history tells us that this is their approach. They brought Hulk Hogan back and put him back in the Hall of Fame because they thought enough time had passed to where they would get away with it. And that's ultimately what it's about. These aren't ethical decisions, these aren't moral decisions, that's not how these big businesses operate. This is a can we get away with it decision. This is a can we make money type decision. And I don't support that personally, but it is the reality of how these companies work and how they operate. So I think Bully Ray is correct. I think you will see Vince show up again at some point. I think that WWE and TKO are monitoring, engaging the situation to see what kind of reaction the documentary appearance gets this week. I mean, most people are just talking about physical Vince stuff, which is whatever, but like doesn't impact his legal situation and all of that. And I think it's only a matter of time, really. Now, I disagree. I do think there would be more pushback for a Vince appearance than there would be for a Brock, because he's like the named defendant. Him and WWE in the lawsuit. John Laurinaitis is no longer a defendant after he flipped like 70 different times because he's a weasel. But Vince is like the big one in that. Now, at the same time, there is every possibility that if No Chance in Hell hit on SmackDown in tomorrow night, people would just pop and go crazy, because again, I think that in the arenas, oftentimes they just don't care and they just want to see stars and moments and stuff like that. And that's not to disparage anyone who's there, but it's not the same level of scrutiny, certainly, as like an online pro wrestling discussion would have. But that's what I think. Quick editorial style video for you here, recapping some of these Bully Ray comments. Yeah, WWE and TKO, they're probably gauging the situation. And I think that once this lawsuit is resolved and it's either settled or arbitration or goes through court or whatever, I think it's a ticking clock before you see Vince McMahon back on WWE TV, even if it's just for a one-off appearance or whatever. It's not something I want to see, but I do think it is inevitable. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you later.